Level 1. Gas station and freezer aisle. Picture a pizza spinning slowly under a heat lamp at a gas station counter at 1 in the morning, the cheese gone matte and a little shiny at the edges, waiting for someone hungry enough to grab it. That's the floor. This tier exists for one reason: survive as long as possible in a freezer, or under a warmer, cheap enough that nobody thinks twice before buying it. The dough is mass-produced months in advance and frozen solid, then baked straight from frozen. The cheese is a low-moisture mozzarella blend, meaning most of the water gets pulled out at the factory so it holds its shape instead of turning into a greasy puddle under heat. The sauce usually starts as tomato concentrate, rehydrated with water, sugar, and a seasoning packet. Not actual fresh tomatoes. Totino's Party Pizza is basically the mascot of this tier. You can grab one for around $2, and calling it pizza-shaped is more honest than calling it pizza. A step up in the freezer aisle, something like DiGiorno tries harder with a rising crust, but it's fighting the same core problem. How do you make dough survive months at 0 degrees and still taste like anything? Gas station hotcase pies from chains like Casey's General Store sit right alongside the frozen stuff, pre-made hours earlier and kept spinning on a warmer until somebody's desperate enough. Think of this tier as gas station sushi's cousin. You know exactly what you signed up for, and somehow you still eat it twice a year anyway. It sits at level 1 because every design choice here, the cheese, the sauce, the crust, is built around shelf life and cost, with taste treated as a lucky accident. Level 2. Chain delivery. One rung up is the pizza that shows up at your door in 30 minutes, driven by someone who just wants to get to the next order. This is the national chain tier: Domino's, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, Little Caesars, built around consistency at massive scale rather than craft. The dough here is real and fresh, mixed daily in store or at a regional commissary, meaning a central kitchen that preps dough for a bunch of stores at once, but it's usually only proofed for a few hours, not days. So it bakes up soft and uniform rather than complex. Cheese is real mozzarella. Sauce is a standardized house recipe, and everything is engineered so a pizza in Ohio tastes identical to one in Oregon, down to the topping placement. Little Caesars built its whole identity on this idea. The hot and ready pepperoni pizza sits warm on the counter for instant pickup. No ordering required. And still runs somewhere around $6 in 2026, one of the cheapest hot meals you can get anywhere in the country. Domino's, meanwhile, has spent decades treating delivery logistics as seriously as the pizza itself, tracking your order down to the minute a driver leaves the store. Papa John's leans on the better ingredients slogan, even if the pizza still lives firmly in the same mass-produced lane. Think of this tier as a rental car: reliable, gets you where you're going, completely forgettable the second you're out of it. It sits above level 1 because it's made fresh to order, or fresh that day, instead of thawed and reheated, and because an actual human somewhere is shaping the dough by hand. But the whole system is optimized around speed and sameness, not flavor, which is exactly why it never quite feels like a treat. Level 3. The neighborhood pizzeria. Now you're at the place you actually have loyalty to, the neighborhood pizzeria with a laminated menu and a guy who's been tossing dough there for 20 years. This tier is where pizza starts being made by people who care specifically about pizza, not a corporate test kitchen chasing consistency across 5,000 locations. The dough usually gets a longer cold ferment, sometimes 24 to 48 hours sitting in the fridge, which builds more flavor and a chewier, more open crumb, the soft, air-pocketed interior you see when you tear the crust apart. Cheese is real block mozzarella, hand-shredded or hand-sliced, not a pre-bagged blend designed to melt a specific way on a conveyor belt. Ovens range from gas deck ovens to the coal and wood setups you still find in older East Coast shops grandfathered in since before city fire codes got strict. New York's Joe's Pizza in Greenwich Village is the classic example: a plain cheese slice, folded in half, from a shop that's been a city institution since 1975. Chicago's Pequod swings the other direction entirely with deep dish, building a caramelized cheese crust baked directly against the edge of a pan instead of on a stone. Think of this tier as your favorite neighborhood bar. Nothing fancy on paper, but you'd argue with a stranger who talked bad about it. It sits above the chain tier because there's an actual person making real decisions about fermentation time, cheese quality, and oven heat. Variables a chain running thousands of identical stores simply can't touch without breaking its own system. Level 4. Certified Neapolitan craft. Cross into serious craft territory, and the rules get strict enough that there's literally an Italian association policing them. This is VPN-certified Neapolitan pizza. Verace Pizza Napolitana, which translates to true Neapolitan pizza, governed by an organization based in Naples that trains and inspects pizzerias worldwide to confirm they're actually following tradition, not just using the name. The requirements are specific and non-negotiable. a wood-fired dome oven running around 905 degrees Fahrenheit. Dough shaped entirely by hand with no rolling pin or mechanical press allowed. Tipo Zero flour, San Marzano-doped tomatoes grown in one protected region near Naples, and Fior di Latte, a fresh cow's milk mozzarella or true buffalo mozzarella. The pizza cooks in roughly 60 to 90 seconds flat, because at that oven temperature, any longer, and the crust burns before the center even sets. Castè in New York and Pizzeria Bianco in Phoenix are the kind of places people fly across the country for. Built entirely around dough fermentation schedules and ingredient sourcing, instead of speed or price. This is the gap between a talented home cook and someone who trained for years specifically to understand how heat, hydration, and time interact inside a 90-second window. It sits above the neighborhood tier because this isn't just extra care, it's codified, inspected technique with a governing body that can revoke your right to use the name if you cut corners. The trade-off is obvious. You're paying for 72-hour dough and imported tomatoes, not convenience, and definitely not speed. Level 5, the world-renowned master. Now you're talking about pizza as a recognized art form, made by a small handful of people considered the best on the planet at it. Franco Pepe runs Pepe and Grini out of a tiny Italian hill town called Caiazzo, and food critics and ranking lists regularly name it among the best pizzerias in the world. People book international flights specifically to eat there, then wait in line for hours once they arrive. Pepe sources individual ingredients from specific small farms he's built relationships with over decades, and even adjusts his dough and flour blend depending on which toppings are going on top, treating each pizza almost like a sommelier treats a wine pairing. Anthony Mangieri, of Una Pizza Napolitana in New York, is famous for making only a limited number of pizzas a night by hand, personally selecting his flour and sea salt with the obsessiveness of a chef running a Michelin-starred kitchen, and simply closing up once he sells out no matter how many people are still standing in line outside. This tier isn't about one ingredient or one rule anymore. It's about decades of obsession compounding on itself. A pizzaiolo, meaning pizza maker, who spent an entire career refining fermentation schedules and sourcing relationships most working cooks never even think to question. It sits above certified Neapolitan because certification just proves you followed the rulebook. This tier is what happens once someone masters that rulebook completely, then keeps pushing until food critics run out of new superlatives to describe it. Level 6. The ultra-luxury ingredient showcase. At some point, pizza stops being about technique and starts being about how much money you can physically pile on top of dough. Industry Kitchen in New York holds the actual Guinness World Record for the most expensive commercially available pizza, officially called the 24K pizza, built from black squid ink dough, topped with white Stilton cheese, foie gras, Périgord truffles from France, and Osetra caviar from the Caspian Sea, then wrapped entirely in edible 24-karat gold leaf. Pay another $700 and they'll finish it with almas caviar, one of the rarest roes on Earth, harvested specifically from albino sturgeon and sold by the ounce like a precious metal. This tier isn't chasing a better crust anymore. The dough itself is almost beside the point. It's a showcase of the most expensive ingredients in the entire culinary world, stacked onto a pizza specifically because pizza is something everyone instantly recognizes, so a $500 topping on one makes a much bigger statement than the same topping on, say, a steak nobody photographs. Think of it like a supercar with a chrome-plated, jewel-encrusted engine bay. The actual engineering underneath matters a lot less than the flex on top of it. It sits above the master pizzaiolo tier because it trades decades of quiet technique for one loud, extremely expensive gesture. A single night, one plate ingredients most diners will never taste in their lives, let alone stumble across sitting on a pizza. Level 7. The ultimate bespoke pizza. And then there's a pizza that costs more than most people's car. Italian chef Renato Viola created the Louis XIII pizza, and depending on the exact order and year, it's been reported anywhere from around $6,000 to $12,000 for a pie barely 8 inches across, sized for 2 people. When someone actually places the order, Viola flies a 3-person team out to their house, a pizzaiolo, a separate chef to prepare the other ingredients, and a sommelier, a wine and spirits expert, who selects the drink pairings for the meal. The dough rests for a full 72 hours before it ever sees an oven. The toppings include 3 rare types of caviar, including beluga, harvested from a critically endangered sturgeon species, plus imported Norwegian lobster and pink Murray River salt, shipped in from Australia. The whole thing finished with a pour of Louis XIII cognac, one of the most expensive spirits money can buy. They're ordering an entire experience, cooked from scratch in their own kitchen, purely for the story afterward. It sits at level 7 because it takes everything from every level below it. Real dough, real technique, genuinely rare ingredients, and multiplies all of it by exclusivity. One pizza, made completely to order, flown in from Italy at a price that turns basic dough and cheese into a full-blown luxury event. Conclusion: from a $2 gas station pie spinning under a heat lamp to a $12,000 pizza flown in from Italy with its own personal sommelier. That's the exact same basic food stretched across an almost unbelievable range. Here's the thing worth sitting with: a great slice at level 3 or 4 will genuinely satisfy you more than most people ever get out of level 6 or 7. Past a certain point, you stop paying for better pizza and start paying for a story to tell afterward. So next time you're deciding where to order from, it's worth asking what you're actually hungry for tonight: dinner or a legend. Let me know in the comments which level you've actually eaten, and subscribe if you want more of these breakdowns.